make you all laugh, point out some things, hopefully you'll learn something. But I must warn you, we trained 5 years to do this job. I've been doing it for 8. What a waste of time. No, I'm joking. And we're not trained to be tour guides. If I get anything wrong, please forgive me and we'll just go on Google. So we're just leaving Richmond now. Richmond is one of the 32 boroughs of London, and that is why there is 32 pods on the London Eye for the 32 boroughs of London. There are 3 royal boroughs, Kingston, Richmond and Kensington, and you're going to see 2 today, 2 for the price of 1. You lucky devils. Richmond's called Richmond because it's where all the rich people live. It's a very easy one to remember that. It is tidal here in Richmond, but it works very differently to the rest of the tidal Thames. Because here in Richmond we only have what's called a half tide. Because in Richmond, which not many people know, we've got our own mini version of the Thames barrier. And basically it's the giant bits of footbridge as you walk out of Richmond, and just underneath it are these 3 metal gates that lower into the river, and they trap 2 metres of water here at all times. And what happens is 2 hours before high tide, so at about 12 o'clock today, they'll open up the barrier and they'll let the tide come in for 2 hours. Then they'll let the tide go out for 2 hours, and at 4 o'clock they'll shut the barrier and lock that 2 metres of water in. So between Richmond and Hampton, you only get 2 hours of the tide coming in and 2 hours of the tide coming out because of the barrier we have here in place in Richmond. It's been there since 1896. For the rest of the River Thames, you get 7 hours of the tide going out, we call that the ebb tide, and you get 5 hours of the tide coming in, we call it the flood tide. In central London, the tide is between 6 and 8 metres in difference. Anything more than that, they shut the Thames barrier at Woolwich. And then the huge orange building, which dominates the skyline, which you can see all the way from Kingston, that massive orange building is my house. That's where I live. I live in one half, my partner lives in the other. We don't have to talk to each other, it's wonderful. Now that used to be the Star and Garter, a place for homeless veterans after World War I and II. Now it's been converted into luxury apartments. And if you do want to buy an apartment there, a 1-bedroom apartment sells for around £2 million. From the back of the boat now, so there's steps that lead you up into the pub. Because when we get the really big tides,
wait for the second half of that sentence. We're waiting.
I mean, you're Twickenham now.
There it is, just on the right. When you get the really big tides though, you can be trapped in the pub for an hour or 2 because when the tide comes up, it actually goes up to the entrance of the pub. But it's always a good excuse if you don't want to go home. You can always say, oh, I'm physically trapped, the tide's coming. It doesn't work with me because I've used it too many times. On the right here, this is Eel Pie Island. It's one of the largest islands on the Thames and one of the most famous islands on the Thames. It's also one of 2 islands on the tidal Thames that people live on.
This is
500
really
years ago, this was a fisherman's island.
Twickenham.
They fished eels out of the Thames and put them into sandwiches, pies. Henry VIII would actually stop off to eat that delicacy at this island when he lived at Hampton Court Palace. This island, also in the 60s, was the most famous place in London to see live music at the Eel Pie Hotel. Bands such as the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Faces performed on this island on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the hotel burned down in the 70s and no longer exists. If you look, all the houses on the island are quite far back. That's because when the tide comes in, you can actually go into the gardens just here. My islands. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, you handsome devils.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Not just any school, it's a private school. I myself actually did indeed not go to private school. Who would have guessed? You won't see any kids there today because it's currently half term, much to all the parents' absolute delight. These are the gates that no longer work, unfortunately, but luckily there are gates in the middle, and that's why we can still use half of the lock.
A mí esta cuestión de ingeniería me parece fascinante. Los locks me parece fascinante. Empiezan a nivelar el agua. Cuando yo llegué acá, no.
You want to go to the front and see up there with the other shop?
Today's lovely lock keepers, one of my favourites. His name is Ian.
No?
Shouldn't have favourites. Ian, you see he's wearing a blue polo there, is a volunteer. So he's not paid to be here, he's volunteers is time. So whatever you do, don't give them a hard time.
Hurry up, Ian.
We bribe them to keep their amounts to keep coming back. Same cleats always, please, John.
This is interesting bit. You can stand up if you want. Hold on, and stand up and look. Stand up if you want and just hold on. Have a look. Give me that. Have a look. What's happening on this one there? Look, have a look. Okay, nothing's going to move fast. Going into a different level. We're going to a different level.
She runs a lot, so behave. We like to think of ourselves as professionals. So with us, they fill the lock up quite quickly. If the lock was full, or we had loads of private boats, they'd fill the lock up much slower. You can see it filling up now. If you'll look over your left-hand shoulder, you can see the water's coming out of here, filling over there, and filling up from the front. Now, if you look at the gates, how they're shaped, the little ones up and down. If you put your hands like that, and then the person next to you, so for instance, if you put your hands like that, and I come over to you now, and I try and push your hands open, I can't do it, can I? That's how the gates were designed on purpose. The locks and the gates were actually designed originally by Leonardo da Vinci. And you can actually see his original drawings in the London Canal Museum. The London Canal Museum is so boring, but his drawings are really interesting. It wasn't until Victorian engineers got hold of Leonardo da Vinci's drawings and looked at it and went, yeah, easy as pie, I can make that happen. Thanks to having locks not just on the Thames, you can get from where we are right now to even further than Birmingham from the River Thames. Not on a boat this big, more like narrow boats. But that's why we have them. And as I say, just 1 inch of water.
The water level's rising.
Is it coming up now? Is the boat going up? Is the boat going up now?
Yeah, it's going up.
The water is pushing those gates shut. Just like as this lock fills up now, the gates behind us are being forced shut by the water that's now filling up. So they couldn't open the gates even if they wanted to. Wondering why there's a rabies sign just here. As Gemma will tell you, I'm a very grumpy man, and if I get locked out for too long, I start attacking lock keepers because I like my timetable. No, there's a lock. This is here because technically you could get a boat from, let's say, anyone from abroad on the boat. Anyone from anywhere. But where are you from, madam? Ireland. From Ireland. My family's from Cork. Let's just say you were in Dublin or Cork, and you took a boat down the English Channel, and you took a boat then down the Thames, and you weren't stopped by the Navy, Border Force, you weren't stopped by the Thames Barrier, you weren't stopped by the Thames Police, you weren't stopped in Richmond if the weirs were up and the tide was coming in. Technically, the first place you'd actually have to stop is right here. And that's why that's there. Very unlikely that ever happens. That's why that's signed there. As I say, the island is open to the public from 8 till 6 in the summer. If you've never come to the island, do come over. The lock keepers are always really nice to tell you about all the stuff that's on the island. They do lots of nice gardens and flowers. There's picnic benches, there's toilets. It's just a great place to bring the kids or the dog for even just an hour. In the winter it's 10 till 4. But if you've never had a walk around the island, it's really worth it. Really worth a visit. So we're going up now. So we're in the lock for about 5 minutes or so. And as I say, once you're about 8 foot up, the gates will be level and we'll be able to go through. The launch dock is the lock we're currently doing. That's the currently, as you can see, that's operation. It's going to do a really big maintenance. So basically redoing the whole lock. And that one's quicker than this because the water comes from the gates and from the island. So when the lifeboat goes into that lock, they can be in and out as quick as 90 seconds. They don't even put a line out, they just there's just the side over there is the